The XRP story isn't slow, it's silent. And in finance, silence is what happens right before new rails either take over or quietly erase anyone who wasn't paying attention. From a distance, the XRP story looks strange. More than a decade after launch, you still see headlines about SWIFT, correspondent banking, and clunky cross-border transfers. XRP trades every day, but we do not see a public flip-the-switch moment where banks announce they are moving trillions through the ledger. To a lot of people, that reads like failure, or at least like a broken promise. At the same time, you see Ripple executives on stage with central banks, at global summits, sitting next to people who actually run payment systems. You see regulated stablecoins, licenses, custody acquisitions, and a quiet expansion into treasury and prime brokerage. The public rails look slow. The institutional footprint looks busy. Those two pictures do not seem to match. That is the tension this episode sits in. On one side, the retail perception that XRP is permanently almost there. On the other side, the institutional reality that nothing in critical financial infrastructure moves fast, and that slowness is not a bug. It is a feature of how the system protects itself. Hidden between those two is the real story of where XRP actually is on its adoption curve. Everything here is for educational and entertainment purposes only, not financial advice. Always do your own research before making any investment decisions. If clear, no hype crypto education helps you make sense of all this. Hit like and subscribe. It tells YouTube this series is worth showing to other newcomers, and it helps me keep building it for you. So, in this first part of the series, we are not going to talk about price or hype or the one day soon narratives. We are going to talk about clocks. Specifically, the difference between the retail clock and the institutional clock, and why XRP looks late on one while being right on time for the other. If you want a mental image for banks, do not think of a sports car. Think of a cargo ship. A fully loaded container ship does not pivot on a dime. It plots a route, it gets clearance, it checks the weather, and when it finally turns, it turns slowly with massive momentum behind it. Changing direction is expensive, risky, and very hard to undo. Large financial institutions are built the same way. Their core systems are decades old. The regulatory obligations are measured in thousands of pages. Their businesses sit on top of layers of settlement agreements, correspondent relationships, and operational procedures that have been refined over generations. When they move, they pull entire ecosystems with them. That means, even if a new rail is objectively better, the default response inside a bank is not, "Let us use it tomorrow." The default response is, "Prove to me that switching will not break anything, will not upset my regulator, will not cause a headline, and will not cost me more in risk than I gain in efficiency." Every new technology, no matter how elegant, has to push against that mass. XRP and the XRP ledger stepped into that world early. A deterministic, fast, low-cost asset and ledger that could, in theory, replace or augment existing rails was always going to collide with the cargo ship problem. The question was never, is this technically better? It was, how do you get a fleet of ships to change routes without crashing into each other? When you look at past infrastructure shifts, you see a pattern. Fedwire did not replace paper overnight. Real-time gross settlement did not kill net settlement in a year. Systems like TIPS or PIX or instant payment schemes in Europe and Latin America went through long periods where they ran alongside legacy processes before volume really moved. Inside a bank, new rails usually arrive in 4 phases. First, they show up in a sandbox, where architects and engineers beat on them in isolation. Then they appear in pilots for very narrow use cases, often with hand-picked clients and tiny volumes. If that goes well, they graduate into a product that sits next to existing rails as an option, not a replacement. Only after this option stage survives years of operational testing do you see serious volume migration. And even then, it tends to start in specific corridors or product lines. None of that looks dramatic from the outside. You do not get a single press release that says, "We have moved half our flows." What you get is a slow shift of traffic, corridor by corridor, client by client, as treasurers and product teams gain confidence. By the time the public notices, the real story is that the change has already been underway for years. When people look at XRP and say, if it were real, the banks would already be using it, they are imagining a world where these four phases do not exist. In reality, those phases are the only way a system that touches global liquidity survives. And they are exactly the phases we are in right now for the broader category of digital settlement. There's another clock running on top of technology, and that is the regulatory and political clock. No risk committee inside a major bank is going to approve large-scale use of a new asset, a new rail, or a new form of digital money until the regulators around them settle on a position they can defend. That means legal clarity on how assets are classified. It means clear rules around stablecoins and tokenized deposits. It means capital treatment for holdings, liquidity coverage rules, resolution planning, and guidance on how these systems behave under stress. Those things are not optional paperwork. They determine how much balance sheet a bank has to tie up to participate. Politicians and central banks also need to know that adoption of any new rail will not undermine monetary policy or financial stability. They are not only asking, does this work? They are asking, does this create a new point of leverage we cannot control? Until that comfort exists, large institutions deliberately underplay what they are doing, even as they experiment behind the scenes. So when you see Ripple sitting in regulatory sandboxes, applying for licenses, working with central banks, and threading its way through different legal regimes, you are not watching a side quest. You are watching them synchronize with the regulatory clock that must tick before the cargo ship can turn. That process looks slow, right up until the moment it is not. All of this becomes even more intense when you talk about real-time settlement instead of simple messaging. SWIFT, at its core, is a secure way to send instructions. The money moves later, and in many cases, it moves in big, netted batches. Banks can smooth out liquidity needs, borrow and lend intraday, and patch over timing mismatches with internal buffers. Real-time settlement does not give you that luxury. When a system settles in seconds with finality, the liquidity has to be there now. That means the bank's internal ledgers, liquidity monitoring, and treasury functions have to operate on a very different rhythm. You cannot bolt a 24/7, 3-second finality rail onto a back office that still thinks in nightly windows and expect everything to work. That is why so much of the real innovation around XRP, stablecoins, and tokenized money is not just, can the ledger handle the transactions? It is, can the institution handle the new liquidity profile, the new risk profile, and the new operational tempo? Until that interior work is done, the external rail will always look underused because it is waiting for the rest of the machinery to catch up. Against that backdrop, Ripple's strategy starts to look a lot less mysterious. Instead of chasing headlines about individual corridors or promising instant dominance, they have spent years stitching themselves into the parts of the system that actually matter to institutions: licensing, custody, treasury connectivity, interoperability with existing messaging standards, pilots with central banks and payment hubs. None of that makes for viral clips, but all of it matters when a bank's risk committee is making a decision. The point here is not to say trust the process as a slogan. It is to recognize that from an institutional point of view, there are prerequisites before you can even consider using something like XRP or a Ripple-issued stablecoin at meaningful scale. You need rails that are proven. You need regulatory cover. You need treasury tools. You need comfortable auditors. You need systems that can survive a crisis scenario without improvisation. When you zoom out, what looks like nothing is happening often turns out to be the period where all of those prerequisites are being built and tested. The ledger exists. The institutional stack is being assembled around it. The missing piece is not a single announcement. It is the slow alignment of all those clocks we have been talking about. This gap between perception and reality is why retail narratives around XRP so often swing between euphoria and despair. One week, the story is that everything is about to go live. The next week, the story is that it was all a fantasy because there was no visible switch. Both reactions assume that institutional adoption should behave like a token listing or a meme cycle. From the institutional side, the story is almost boring in its predictability. Build the technology, prove it works, wrap it in regulation, integrate it into existing hubs, modernize the interiors of the institutions that will use it. Start small with limited flows, in corridors where the risk is manageable. Scale up as the data supports it. If you watch XRP only through the lens of price or public corridor announcements, you will always feel out of sync with what is actually happening. If you instead watch the slow, methodical alignment of technology, regulation, and bank infrastructure, the picture's very different. It looks less like a stalled project and more like an asset and a ledger waiting for the rest of the system to catch up. This first episode is the scaffolding. Before we drill into specific rails, specific institutions, or specific products, we needed to reset the mental model. The question is not, why is nobody using XRP? It is, what has to be true across banks, regulators, and infrastructure before they can use it at scale and survive the decision? In the next chapters of this series, we are going to zoom in on those layers. We will look at the interior of banks and payment institutions and talk about why their clearing systems, treasury operations, and netting engines are the real bottlenecks. We will look at the external rails Ripple has already built while most of the market was distracted. Then, we will bring those layers together and talk about what happens to settlement, liquidity, and eventually XRP's role when real-time digital finance is no longer experimental. For now, the takeaway is simple. XRP is not running late on the retail clock. It is running on the institutional clock, and that clock is tied to cargo ships, risk committees, and regulatory cycles, not to social media threads. If you judge the story only by what you can see on the surface, you will always think nothing is happening. Once you understand how these systems actually change, the illusion of slow adoption starts to crack. If you want to follow that story at the level where it actually matters, the plumbing, the incentives, and the mechanics, you are in the right place. This entire series is about that layer of reality, not the noise that sits on top of it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next deep dive. This channel is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and is not financial advice. Always do your own research and keep the discussion respectful. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, subscribing, leaving a comment, or sharing it with a friend.